But what I'd like to do is um, kind of do this. It's really a combination because, again, space is something that we don't necessarily, even though it's there, we're not aware of it. So it takes what they call it pointing instructions. So you have to point to the space that the mind kind of holds. And so there's a reference between the space and the mind. Now, one of the things about our experience is that it's constantly, adjusting to one of the senses or the objects that come up. And the practice here is, yes, it's true that we have to begin to acknowledge or release somehow the objects and put more attention on what is holding the objects. And that's space, good reference, sky of mind. Also, I want to reference the Venerable Ajahn Chah, who really talks about this through Ajahn Amaro, explaining somewhat the difference here, and then I want to move through that. Ajahn Chah would then explain that the mind's nature is still, yet it's flowing. It's flowing, yet it's still. He would use the word citta for knowing mind, the mind of awareness. The citta itself is totally still. It has no movement. It is not related to all the arises and ceasing. It is silent and spacious. Mind objects, sights, sounds, smell, taste, touch, thoughts, and emotions flow through it. Problems arise because the clarity of mind gets entangled with sense impressions. The untrained heart chases the delightful, runs away from the painful. As a result, finds itself struggling, alienated, and miserable. By contemplating our own experience, we can make a clear distinction between mind that knows, citta, and the sense impressions that flow through it. By refusing to get entangled with any sense impressions, we find refuge in the quality of stillness, silence, and spaciousness, which is the mind's own nature. This policy of non-interference allows everything and is disturbed by nothing, from the Venerable. Now, where I'm going to take this a little bit today, which is kind of a mix, I'm supposed to, anyway, I have about an hour to do some things. So I'm going to mix them up a little because I want to take the idea of space and awareness. And one of the things that hasn't been mentioned that actually is very much a part of it is heart. And so to bring awareness both to the nature of the objects and the space, but also the feeling base, which in a lot of senses, it's where these the Mahayana teachings of heart have to come in. And so I think, like all things, when we first come to the practice of sitting and just being with the breath, that in that there is an exclusivity that is created due to the need for the one-pointedness because of basically the scatteredness of the mind. So that one-pointedness is necessary. We train ourselves to have that one-pointedness. To have that one-pointedness, which allows there to be some awareness of, I kind of use the word hypothetical stillness is there. And at that point, one can turn the mind around on itself and realize, oh, it's the knowing that actually matters. And yet all my experience is simply You know, the body, what is the body? The body is a constantly, constantly in flux and changing. And at the same time, there is the awareness or the knowing of it. It's actually quite relaxed and still. And we want to put more emphasis on that stillness of mind. And note that it's also within the sphere of, you know, you could just use the word care, that there is just a lot of care there in the in this awareness of that it is not just a mind and a consciousness, but it's actually a heart that has to mirror or be connected to that. So I'm going to just do, this is going to be a little short in the sense of sitting, because I think Bruce kind of nailed a lot of it, but I'm still going to, from a little bit of different angle, come at this. It really is this space heart practice. So I'd like you just to, first of all, just to note your body sitting here in whatever posture it's in. And bring some attention to the first, just the truth of, you could, as Ajahn Chah said, it's just a flow that's going on. And so the relative mind is connecting with time and space, and yet it's noting the flow, not necessarily that which is holding it. And this is where we can just turn the mind around on itself and begin to experience this flow of really it is the elements and the elements of seeing and hearing and feeling and tasting and smelling and thinking and imagining. And noting those elements are part of the temporal or temporary experience of moments of arising and passing away. And we're not trying to interfere with those. We're simply kind of resting back and holding ourselves. And again, there has to be that balance between the spaciousness, and maybe you could just say it's a caring, the heart, that is part of that human experience, that human consciousness, that human awareness. As you begin your practice, simply listening, letting go of the body and the breath, of the mind's, in the sense, kind of fickleness in its ability to run after memories and thoughts and perceptions and impressions. And note that there are kind of the background, there are sounds of your own body, sounds of the building maybe, or the street, the soft sounds that arise in the center of all that. And their nature of arising and passing and being replaced by new ones. But the practice is just listening at this point simply to the kind of the quality of heart and the free nature of this natural awareness, not sticking to any of it. And as you sit, sensing or imagining, the mind is not limited to your head, that there are no boundaries to the mind, that your mind, awareness itself, is like great, vast, open space, big as this room and bigger in every direction, open, clear, like an empty sky. There's no inside or outside, no boundaries to the mind, heart, to awareness, just vast, open space, transparent and silent. The sounds that you hear, the thoughts that move, and the sensations with the body are just like the clouds arising and passing in the great open space. No boundaries, no inside or outside, just great space. These words come and float, or a moment within the space of your own mind, your own sounds and thoughts, memories arise in this clear open sky of mind. In its true state, mind is actually open, without boundaries, clear, empty, containing all things, yet not limited by them. As you become aware of the sensations of breath, in this space of mind, heart, the breath moves like a breeze. No inside, no outside. Just sensations changing and playing in this open space of mind, heart. You notice carefully there will be no solid physical body. There's no head, no arms, no torso, no legs. Sense directly the physical body is felt as sensations, pressure, warmth, coolness, tingling, hardness, vibration, all floating and changing slowly in the same clear space of mind. No inside, no outside. No solid body at all. Just areas of pressures, areas of touch, warmth, cool, vibration. Breath, it moves like a breeze. Physical sensations float like bubbles. Sounds come and go. There are no boundaries. Each arises, exists, and passes in this clear, transparent, empty space of heart-mind. To see if this is so, look within your own mind. If you look closely, the mind is perfectly at rest, like a great ocean or a clear, empty sky. The breath moves like a breeze. Sensations float and change in the same transparent space. Yet the mind-heart is undisturbed, like the sky is unmoved by clouds that arise. No inside, no outside, no boundaries or limits, just things arise in this space of openness and disappear. That natural awareness is unhindered by the comings and goings. Its simple ability to hold all things without preference, without judgment, without needing them to be different, but noting that the natural awareness and good heart are simply at rest, allowing all the comings and goings. Words and images, feelings, and even moods arise in the clear, open, colorless, transparent space. They exist for a time and then disappear, like sounds or the breath. They have no roots, no home. To know if this is so, look within your own mind heart. So I'd like to end this part of the sitting this moment by reading first a little piece by the Dalai Lama, and then one of the great poets and visionaries of the Tibetan tradition. His name was Shabkar. It is sometimes thought that to follow our impulses is a form of freedom. But by acting that way, we remain at the mercy of all the unbridled thoughts that are consistently enslaving us. For from curtailing our freedom, the mastery of our mind allows us to take our lives in hand instead of giving in to the usual tendencies and the mental confusions. To enjoy freedom, one must free ourselves from the dictatorship of the self and all of its conflicting emotions. To enjoy freedom, we must free ourselves of the dictatorship of the self and all its conflicting emotions. From the great poet and teacher and visionary, Shabkar. When I stay, I have nothing to be attached to. When I leave, I have nothing to leave behind. Wherever I am, no one says, "Where have you been? Where are you going?" I, the renunciant, am happy and sing this song of joy. Having raised my head and seen the cloudless sky, it made me think of absolute boundless space. I have felt a freedom without middle or end, free of any partial views. I have known the state of freedom from attraction and repulsion, from hopes of reaping fruit and the fear of failure. I have let go. And that's from the great, he was a contemporary actually after Milarepa, and followed a lot of his footsteps. So I want to just take a moment for transition here. So I would like to take a moment, first of all, just to honor the lineage here. And I was thinking this morning, the Ajahn Mun, he was a mendicant who he was a wanderer, and he would wander from place to place, and he was very hard to find or catch in any way. And yet he was able to also transmit this awakened mind, or this natural awareness, which is not something to be achieved, but is something to be realized. This is from Ajahn Mahabua, who was a contemporary of Ajahn Mun. And interesting enough, he was the one who wrote so much of the story of Ajahn Mun. But and he stayed within the monastery realms and wrote and was quite quite a great recorder of Ajahn Mun's life. And his contemporary, which is the Venerable Ajahn Chah. Whatever arises has to vanish. Whatever is true is a natural principle and of itself won't vanish. And in other words, the pure mind won't vanish. Everything of every sort may vanish, but that which knows their vanishing doesn't vanish. This vanishing and that vanishing, but the one which knows their vanishing doesn't vanish. Whether or not we try to leave it untouched, it keeps on knowing. The mind blankets everything. So we come to these practices and we learn primary disciplines, which are really based on, it's kind of a progressive process here of collecting ourselves. And there's never one point where we let go of all of this, because these are just processes. So there is the idea that we see that we are either caught up or we're scattered. And then we bring ourselves back to this one-pointedness. And we train ourselves over and over in that. But soon there begins to be a lucidity, which is something that says, oh, there's something that I'm beginning to recognize or know, which is not dependent on change. It's not dependent on the vanishing. It's actually something that is always there. And I have this possibility of bringing my attention to its nature. And it's really why I thought natural awareness was this. It's such it's not a foreign subject. It is something that is always there. And something that Philip said this morning about the fact that going from sitting to walking to sitting, that there is actually begins to be a continuity in the fundamentals of change that don't take us away from that heart-mind awareness. We spend years and years, in a sense, I think many of you have, in cultivating the ability to collect yourself. And then there is a point where one begins to see that there is this possibility of that knows staying awake through the kind of the sense world of experience, of very much, the Ajahn Chah's truth that somehow, as we go through all this, that there is this natural awareness which is actually still in the middle of a constant flow of constant change that's coming. And one of the things I see about getting older is I like steadiness. And yet the truth is all I'm experiencing is change. And that this change cannot be somehow changed into steadiness. Steadiness has to come from somewhere that in many ways is that chitta that knows is part of a trained heart. And I like it's kind of synonymous using the words mind heart because they aren't so separate. I mean, one of my when I first came to the practice when I was in my early 20s and living in Nepal, my teacher, Thupten Yeshi, he would point to his heart and say, when he was teaching, he'd say, my mind. And he would point at his heart. And I always thought, well, it's not exactly where your mind is. And but as the years went by, I began to realize, no, he was right. That where does the mind seat itself? It seats itself in the heart. And that there is the ability to recognize the natural awareness, or I'm just going to use the word freedom, the natural freedom that's available to us. And it's certainly the body has energetics of the crown of the head, the third eye, the throat, the belly, but the heart is really where a knowing happens. It's sort of like the balance. In ways I remember also in India in the early years, I met a lot of especially Krishnamurti people who were very bright, and they took these practices and were very much in their heads. And I began to see that somehow, that they professed a certain freedom, but they didn't have the freedom. And what was the difference was, they didn't have that heart piece, that connection between the space and the heart, which then gave them, a sense of fearlessness and friendliness. And those are really good words, fearlessness and friendliness. So whatever arises, they have that possibility. In the Theravadan teachings, which I'd like to refer to in which is known as this is one section of it, the Udana, which is it's a collection of inspired teachings. There is the great kind of story of which I absolutely love, which is Bahia of the bark cloth. And he was a wandering ascetic who came to, I think was he in Sarvasti, which is where the Buddha spent about 20 rainy seasons in north central India. And today it's really, there are these ruins and monasteries and stuff. And there was this ascetic named Bahia who had been practicing for 20, 30 years, but hadn't achieved full awakening. He had had glimpses. And he went to the Buddha, and the Buddha was on his alms round and said, Baiya, you have to come back for teaching. I'm busy with my monks right now. And Baiya, though, his statement was, life is uncertain, Venerable Sir. We never know when we are going to die. Please teach me the Dharma. And as story goes, the Buddha went on and said, well, when I'm finished with this, then we'll come to my monastery and we'll discuss this. And he said, no, I don't have time for this. And the thing was, he asked the Buddha 3 times. And as story goes, on the 3rd time, the Buddha stopped with his collecting alms. And he turned to Baiya and he said very clearly, be attentive and careful from what I'm about to say. In the seen, there is only the seen. In the heard, there is only the heard. In the sensed, there is only the sensed. In the cognized, there is only the cognized. Thus you should see that there is no thing. There is no thing here. This Baiya is how you should train yourself. Thus you should see that there is no thing here. Since Baiya, this for you is the seen. In the seen, only the seen. In heard, only the heard. In the sense, only the sense. In the cognized, only the cognized. So these are the 5 senses in the mind, and these are the impressions that the Buddha is simply stating a fact. And he says again, there is no thing here. You will therefore see that indeed there is no thing there. So again, he's talking about there's no here and there's no there. And so that really, in a sense, that there's always this knowing, and one of the sense doors of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, cognizing that are there. And that the Buddha simply points and says, there is no dualism, no here and there. And as you see that there is no thing there, you will see that you are therefore located neither in the world of this nor the world of that, nor in any place between the two. This alone is the end of suffering. So the Buddha really is pointing at, that all here and there, all the dualism of, in the sense of there is this natural awareness, which is always there, and its constant need to identify, to know, to sometimes control or change our experience as it happens. And this is saying, well, you can take one step back from that, because that's, in a sense, that's a relative intelligence of how the world works. And this is stepping back saying, no, I have to look at this as a bigger picture. And I think when we do that, then we begin to see that, it's interesting. So the word Dharma, traditionally, is actually, we can say it's just naming the truth It's the Buddha's teachings, but it is also nature, you know. And so when we can kind of look out at nature and realize that somehow there is more to this single consciousness that is actually something that we always are playing with. You know, oh, there's a tree, there's a rabbit, there's something that we are identifying with. And simply saying, no, I am actually more than that. I am actually all things. I am, and now this gets a little bit vast, and I know out there, but it is also saying that once that consciousness is no longer attached to the here or over there, the there, that suddenly it has this capacity for this great, vast, broad knowledge without, you know, and this is, I think, kind of the magic of this sometimes, which is maybe a bad word to use, but there is intelligence of all of this beyond the kind of individual knowing that we have. And that is that connection when the heart mind is no longer you know, it is really that thing of self knowing, and this is more knowing without self, and that is really the objective to all of this, is somehow getting to a place where there is just this kind of broad, vast openness that, in a sense, you know, whether it's tree or rock or a stream or the sun or this full moon that's up, that there is this connecting to it, and without trying to control it or change it or, you know, dissect it in any way, but simply to have that capacity to have a mind that no longer is needing to identify, but is needing to be part of this whole awareness and heart. And again, you know, it's a little bit like the fluidity of this is that we're walking through space, and at the same time, there is that kind of natural awareness that's there, is encompassing, it's holding without identifying. And our problem here is that our need to identify is so built in the here and there, or the dualism of knowing and not knowing. And this is saying that ultimate knowing, which is not relative knowing, but ultimate knowing, is simply this capacity to, you know, you, in some ways, you are the tree, you are the rock, and this is a simplification of it. You are those things, and they have their own intelligence. And at the same time, it means that we have to kind of, even though we're very intelligent creatures, we have to step back from our knowing them and letting, in a sense, that speak to us. No here nor there, but in this kind of wide angle space, or this wide angle lens. I think, you know, at this point, I'd like to take a few questions, and we'll see where we go from there. But I think we kind of run the subject, I hope in a good way for you, and that if you have a question, let's see, I'll have to change my